Assalamualaikum, hi, and welcome to one of the most exciting projects for me. I want to welcome you to Islam, the past, present, and future. This has been one of the most extensive works that I've been working on. The format for this, however, has changed. Initially, we had decided to do this on Jet Webinars, but due to some shortcomings from Jet Webinars' side with the broadcasting system, we will change the format. So what will happen is I'll essentially be doing a recording live and then uploading it onto YouTube, and then you can post your comments below, and I'll be more than happy to answer the questions each day as we go on in these last 10 days of Ramadan. Now, first thing first, why am I actually doing this? And why me? And what will this entail? So, after spending 26 years, some of you will know, in the UK and spending most of my life there, I've decided to move to Pakistan. And whilst in the UK, I realized that there is this prevailing trend that is happening, especially in the West. There's a lot of confusion and chaos there in the minds of the youth. But this trend, however, also extends to Pakistan. Now that I've spent the last 4 months in Pakistan, I've realized this is a global trend. This isn't something just in the West. This is also in the East. There's a global trend of a sense of confusion and chaos regarding religion, religious beliefs, and spirituality. And so, and to be honest, I was one of these people. I was one of these people who was confused as well until 2016, where I decided to throw everything at it, everything that I knew, all my knowledge, experience, exposure, skills, solving this problem, to getting clarity on what is this religion, what is Islam, being born into a Muslim household, being born into a Muslim family, and with the banner of Islam, what is this? And so I managed to get some sort of clarity, and I wanted to share it with others so that it might benefit them. But the key thing is, what are the root causes of confusion in this day and age? The root causes are essentially that the knowledge that we are taught as Muslims, especially, and I speak for myself, I mean, as growing up in a Muslim household, things that I was being taught were not matching perception. The expectations that were being set, I mean, the things that we were being taught were not matching what we were seeing in society. And when expectation does not meet perception, that is when confusion arises in the mind. And so, after studying history and after taking a step back and analyzing things, I realized a few things which I'm going to share with you now. The origins of this confusion actually seem to be from the time um, of colonization, when the lands were colonized. Especially from my perspective, I mean, in Pakistan, I realized that there's still concepts that predate back to the time of the British Empire, when they colonized the Indian subcontinent. And more recently, the trends seem to originate from the fall, from Islamic perspective, from the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1923, and issues that also came to the surface after the world wars, after mass migration and redistribution of populations, which led to people seeking either safety or a better quality of life. And from those that migrated, so after the world wars, those that migrated for safety or for better quality of life, there were essentially two groups, which I narrowed it down to. And especially for those listening in the UK, and this is what I observed from my time in the UK. There's essentially two groups of migrants. The first class of migrants were either laborers, people who had migrated, who moved to work in factories, especially in Manchester, where there were cotton mills and other mills that were there, um, thanks to the prior industrial revolution that was going on. And the second group were essentially the cream of the crop. So the education system had been sort of abolished, in the colonized nations, and better institutes were upheld in the developed countries abroad, such as the UK, Europe, and the US. And so the cream of the crop of the developing nations, later on now developing nations as we call them, would have to go for further education to these developed countries to gain knowledge and expand their opportunities. Now, as time evolved, what's happened is the first group of people who initially came as laborers ended up as either taxi drivers or owning restaurants, ended up in the restaurant business. And the second group of people that came evolved into professionals who largely ended up serving either the corporates or serving the healthcare profession, for example, the NHS in the UK, which were governed by bodies such as GMC, or if you're a dentist, GDC. And to incentivize the second group, nationalities were offered. You could become a national citizen, which will allow you to travel to so many countries, and you'll have these perks like welfare benefits. And the caveat was that you would have to serve the system that was in place. Now, the first group played the role of avoiding the system by avoiding paying taxes, whilst the second group ended up paying the taxes, so they made up for the first group. And this trend prevails till today. Not much, not much changed from the time that I was there and what I saw growing up in the UK. And then what would happen is the second group, who were more affluent, they, as time would go on, the children would grow up there, as was the case in my parents' situation. We'd grow up, and then they would justify that, and they will all have a desire to come back to the homeland, so to speak. But the thing is, then they would justify that the children education is important. So they would justify staying abroad for longer. And in the process of staying longer, what would happen is you would need food, you would need shelter, right? You need a job. To have your shelter, you could not afford the shelter, so most people took a mortgage. Mortgage, as I've recently learned from Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, actually is derived from the root words. Well, it essentially means death contract. It's derived from mortir, which means death, to die, and gauging some contract. So essentially, a mortgage is a death contract, and you keep working till you basically, you keep working. And so this dream that was given post World War, even in the situation in America, so the American dream which people chased after and are still chasing after, is actually a deception. It's an American deception. It's not an American dream. In the UK, that was largely the case also. And so what would happen is people would stay there, you stay there, and you pay off this mortgage, which is never ending due to interest. And and the excuse that you were doing it for your children's education, what would happen is you would just try to make ends meet, and a lot of people would end up ill also. Not only that, what I observed was people would end up losing the very thing that they claimed that they were staying there for, i.e. their children. And this is the main reason why I'm doing this presentation. Because what I realized from my generation was that there were two things. Firstly, that there was a cultural gap. Our parents left their countries and came to the UK or the US or Australia or wherever they were, or wherever we ended up with them. And the culture that they grew up in was very different to the culture that we grew up in, and they could not empathize with us, largely. And so the first issue was a cultural gap. Second issue that arose was a generational gap. that was basically technology and everything evolved at such a rapid rate, especially after 2001, that our parents' generation were not able to keep up with what we were doing and how society was evolving, and that is still the case. And not only that, forget our parents' generation, we ourselves, especially I speak for myself. I mean, the way, if you just look at apps, for example, the rate at which apps are being developed, it is increasingly becoming cumbersome to, or challenging, to keep up with all this rapid development at the rate at which it's developing. And so, in the times that we're living in, where basically there's a lot of burden, especially when it comes to financial burden, there's loans, debts, people struggling to make ends meet. You've got people looking for shortcuts and justifying shortcuts because they're struggling to make ends meet. The youth are being frustrated with, especially a lack of jobs now with an economic downturn. And not having an income means that they don't have the independence. Because they don't have the independence, they don't have the influence, they don't have the impact. And so, and even fundamental things like not being able to get married, and in an age where marriage has become one of the most difficult things. That's why adultery has become one of the most easiest and prevalent things. And that is down to the parents, the lack of understanding from the parent side, and the lack of poor Islamic scholarship, which I'll discuss in much further detail. And so the other things that have happened in this day and age is that a lot of sectarianism has emerged. A lot of division. The Islamic scholarship has failed, and it's failed miserably. But these were things that the Prophet, and Muhammad ibn Abdullah, because I've kept this as an open platform, so Muhammad ibn Abdullah for those that are non-Muslims. And as for the Muslims wondering why I use this, the reason is because this is the Sunnah. So the Sunnah is basically the way. And the Sunnah of the Prophet was that and this is an incident in the Seerah where basically allegiance was being pledged with non-Muslims. And Ali, who was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, who was also his cousin, wrote in the treaty Prophet Muhammad, Muhammad Rasulullah, the Messenger of Allah, and Prophet Muhammad asked him to change that to Muhammad ibn Abdullah because he said that for them, he's not a prophet. So when you do something on a global scale where the platform is open, you refer to it as Muhammad ibn Abdullah. When you do it in a specific Muslim audience, then you refer to it as Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay, and I hope that clarifies a lot of the ambiguity that is there in my work, and people question why I use Muhammad ibn Abdullah in my work that are open-ended. Well, not open-ended, for an open platform that are catering to humanity. For those that accept Islam, for them it's Muhammad Rasulullah, for them it's Prophet Muhammad. Okay. Now coming back, so Prophet Muhammad for the Muslims, Muhammad ibn Abdullah prophesied that during the last age, the scholars would be the worst people under the skies. But this isn't referring to all scholars. When it comes to scholarship, my teacher, Maulana Siddiq, Maulana is just a title given to, you can say, a scholar. But he basically taught me that the two groups of scholars. One is ulama scholars, and ulama is also a term, alim, scholar. So there are lots of terms for scholars. I won't go into the details for the sake of simplifying things. And this is the thing, I want to keep things as simple as possible, especially for the youth, because there's a lot of words that are used that creates much more confusion and it hinders clarity. So, but going back, and I do have a tendency to digress, which I apologize for. There are two groups when it comes to scholars. One is ulama Rabbani and one is ulama Su. So there are good scholars and there are bad scholars. Okay. And the Prophet also prophesied that in the end times knowledge will be taken away by the taking away of scholars. This is very interesting because in this day and age, there's more knowledge that is available than ever before. There's more knowledge that you can access than ever before. Just have to type something in Google and you'll get your answer. So Professor Google, Mufti Google, you just type something in and you get your answer straight away. So then why is it in an age where knowledge is so accessible that we have so many challenges and so much confusion and chaos? And the reason is what the Prophet said, Muhammad ibn Abdullah said. He said, knowledge will be taken away by the taking away of scholars, i.e., people that are able to do something with the knowledge. Not that the availability of knowledge will not be there, the availability of knowledge will be there, it will be in abundance. But the fact that you lack the people that will be able to do anything with the knowledge. And I learned this from my trip to the largest chemical corporation, BASF, when I'm really grateful when they invited me to Germany, Ludwigshafen, to the headquarters. When a girl there asked me, and then it was when I was blessed to be part of the European talent pool, where they got together the most talented people in Europe, upcoming chemical engineers, to do this workshop on project management. And this German girl, asked me, she said that in UK, and I was the only UK representative, and when they saw me with a beard and with my looks, they must have thought, what's happened to UK? But anyhow, anyhow, the girl asked me, she said that if UK has got so much talent, why are they not so advanced? And straight away, this hadith, so hadith is a saying of the Prophet, which is been narrated, which is a narration that passed down to generations. And then this narration came to my mind. That it's not the fact that UK and the West do not lack knowledge, or we as a globe do not lack knowledge. It's the fact that we do not have people that are able to do anything with the knowledge. And so what we lack are true scholars, and we need stronger scholarship. And so I'm going to give you the limitations for myself and this work, because it's important to know. To teach Islam, you need something known as an ijaza, or permission to teach Islamic content and information, to disseminate it. I am not a formal scholar. I do not have, I'm not a religious scholar of any sort, so qualified, traditional, modern, anything, right? I do not have any formal Islamic education, apart from the courses that I've attended here and there, at Sufa Institute, mostly in Birmingham, and I'll mention more about them. Instead, and I do not claim to be a Islam scholar, and I do not want to get into those things. Right? Instead, I've been blessed to be a Muslim, first and foremost, a believer, a multi-award-winning chemical engineer, scientific researcher, social entrepreneur, life coach, and a holistic naturopath. I simply am a student of life, and I've tried to make sense of the times that we're living in and the events that we are witnessing and experiencing. And therefore, I am open to making mistakes and being corrected when it's necessary. Now, the typical process to become formalized as a scholar is that you need to have an ijaza permission, and how you get that is you study formally under a teacher or a group of teachers in a schooling system known as a madrasa. And what happens is you then develop something known as a sanad, which is a scholarly spiritual lineage which can be traced back to the Prophet Muhammad. And then you have the permission, or you're validated, and that gives you the credibility to teach. Now, in this day and age, that is not that it's impossible. That's something that I do not wish to pursue, because we do not lack Islamic scholars, okay? Neither do we lack secular scholars, okay? What my job and what I'm doing is I'm just simply going to share my experience, and I've been blessed to spend a lot of time with a lot of Islamic scholars. I've been blessed to spend a lot of time with a lot of secular scholars. And so what I've tried to do is combine the two oceans of knowledge. I will be, and it is the duty as an Islamic scholar and as a secular scholar to give you evidence. Everything has to be evidence based. And so I will be giving the sources of where I've obtained my information from. Okay, I'll be referencing scholars or institutes or places or sources where I've obtained my information from. Those that are listening to me should not believe a word that I say unless they verify that those sources, and most of these will either be students or you'll be following these people on various sources, or you verify them from them. Okay, so your job is to not take my word, but if what I say can be verified um, from the various teachers or from the various sources, then that adds to the credibility of what I'm saying, and then you can believe what I say. Okay, so that's the fundamentals covered. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about my own background, because I think that's important. A lot of people, I'm not, a lot of people that haven't been following me throughout my journey in academia will not know much about me, or social entrepreneurship for that matter. So I'll just give you a brief background about myself. So I was actually born in Lahore, Pakistan, in 1990, and when I was 9 months old, my family moved to Ireland. We lived in Galway, Dublin, and Sligo. And from a Islamic perspective, actually, I'll just add that in, which I've not shared with those that I've presented this slide to in other platforms, is that when we moved to Ireland, Islam was not as widespread as it is today. So even, for example, halal meat, which is abundantly available now and is something that the Muslims take for granted in UK and US and different parts of the world, that was a luxury. My father had to go to the farm and he would do the slaughter for the whole entire town, for the Muslims of that town, which at that time were mostly professionals that had migrated, so they were from the second group of people that I mentioned. They were from the second group of people that I mentioned, and they were mostly professionals that had come for the further education and training. And so what he would do was my father would go to the farm, do the slaughter, and then they would send the meat um, to the local towns and cities, halal meat, and then the Muslim doctors would be able to obtain that meat. And so the point that I want to get across is that a lot of the Muslim youth have it very easy now, but a lot of sacrifice has gone in from the past generations and from the elders, which needs to be respected. Now we've got masjids, or places of worship around every other corner, especially in Manchester, where I spent most of my life. And halal places, you've got a whole curry mile in Manchester. But things were not like that. They were not like that, and not too long ago. So 1990s, wasn't too long ago. And so we need to respect, we need to acknowledge the efforts of the past generations and the elders, and how much sacrifice that they have done. But anyway, so after in Ireland, spent 5 years there in Galway, Dublin, Sligo, loved it. It was largely in a Catholic environment. Me and my sister lived there, and I just have one elder sister, and we spent our time there, and they really looked after us well. They didn't really differentiate with us being Muslims, and treated us like their own. And after spending 5 years in Ireland, me and my sister moved back to Pakistan to live with our grandparents because there were some visa issues in Ireland. Work permits that the professionals had to get, and my dad was struggling with those, so we came back, lived with my grandparents. And this was the first time where formal Islam was introduced to me and my sister. So this is the time where we were told about the Quran. This was the time where we were taught about the prayers of Salah. Prior to this in Ireland, we had in the first 5 years or 6 years, because my sister was older than me, is older than me, and we did not have that exposure. So coming back to the time, the second stint in Lahore, the first stint was very small, and this is where we started to get an insight of what religion is. And we didn't really have a formalized teaching in terms of having going to a madrasa or anything. This was simply knowledge transferred from our grandparents to the best of their ability that they understood Islam. Now, after spending 1.5 to 2 approximate years, my dad had managed to secure his job. And those of you that don't know, from if you've come from the Academy of Champions or if you've known me, my dad was a junior doctor in Ireland, and this is the reason why we moved so much. So my dad managed to secure his next job in Birmingham, and this is the same period of time when my uncle was doing his PhD at the University of Birmingham in the electrical engineering department, whilst my other uncle was my mum's sister's husband was doing it at the mechanical engineering department, also at the University of Birmingham. So we had a family sort of connection with Birmingham, and my dad managed to secure a job in Birmingham. So me and my sister came from Pakistan to Birmingham, and after Birmingham, my dad managed to secure his next job in Bolton. Spent a year or so, a few years in Bolton. Had an amazing time with especially the Gujarati Muslim community there. Again, we were strangers to Bolton, and the Gujarati community being Pakistani and them being Indian, but the thing is, there was no love lost, there was love upon love. And had an amazing time in Bolton before finally moving in Oldham in 1997. And so in Bolton, I went to St. and so people question my schooling, and there's all this thing about having Muslim schools, and this is something that I discussed with someone called Mufti Imran, who's based in Usul Institute in Birmingham. And people would ring him up, and they would say, mothers would say, "Oh, our son goes to St. Augustine's, St. James's, St. John's, and we're worried that he'll lose his deen or lose his Islam." Mufti Imran's reply and mine have been pretty much the same. I went to St. James's, I went to St. Hiban, and I went to all these St. whatever. I've had mostly a Catholic upbringing in terms of the education schools that I went to, and I ended up fine. And so your actual schooling, what I want to say is, starts from home. And so do not use external schooling as an excuse. Your predominant schooling starts at home. If you can develop Islamic schooling and all that, that's a bonus. Okay, that's a bonus. But let not that be an excuse for you and your duties and the upbringing. You need to take responsibility for your own children and their own upbringing. Anyhow, next, Birmingham, Bolton, Oldham. So Oldham is where I spent most of my time. Oldham, again, predominant community where I lived was of Bangladeshis, Bengalis. Again, loved them to bits. Again, made amazing friends. Again, the challenges in Oldham were different. The challenges in Birmingham community are different. The challenges in Bolton are different. But overall, there are clear-cut patterns. There is this sense of confusion. There is this sense of chaos. Especially in the Muslim communities. But again, this pattern in England is also a pattern that is observed. I've observed this also in Spain and different parts of Europe, and I've observed this in also Pakistan. And so what I'm about to present applies to the entire youth and the entire Muslims on the planet. And my job is to share my experience to give you clarity. And in Oldham, that's where I did my GCSEs. That's where I did my A-levels, Hume Grammar School I went to. And from there, I basically went to the University of Manchester, did my Masters in Chemical Engineering with Business Management, then I did my PhD. And so all my higher education and lower education, everything has been done from the UK. Okay, so let me give you a bit more of my family background to give you an idea of. So it might give you an idea of why I say things and a bit more perspective about myself. So I neither believe, and I've put this in the description that I had for this event, that I neither believe in sectarianism, neither do I believe in nationalism. Okay, what is my justification? So my maternal, I do not know much about my paternal lineage, but I have got a very good idea of, actually, I know my maternal lineage. So the person that you see, so that's me on the right, then that's his Professor Laudin Sheikh, who was my maternal grandfather. His father was Shamsuddin, and Shamsuddin's father was Nizamuddin Aulia. His resting place is in Multan, where my father is from. So my father's from Multan, which is the city of saints, and it's known for its heat and its mangoes. And my mother, although she was born in Pindi, Rawalpindi near Islamabad, she spent most of her life in Lahore, and I was born in Lahore. And we've lived most of our life in Lahore. So the reason why I'm sharing this slide with you is that although we obtained Western education, my grandfather, Professor Laudin Sheikh, as you can see, we stuck with our core root values. We did not do them in a way to compromise our own core values. My grandfather never did he preach sectarianism, and never did he believe in nationalism. Um, Neither did he believe in racism, capitalism, or communism. Okay, we just believe in the middle path, and what he would preach to me is be simple as you can in your approach to life. Um, and he was my living role model. So no Islamic scholar. So I never believe in, and so when it comes to scholarship as well. So a lot of people now are asking me in Pakistan, when they see me with a beard, they presume that I have these sheikhs and fees and all this sort of stuff, and I do not believe in any of that. I believe that you can go to a knowledgeable person to learn knowledge from, but I do not believe in this concept of bayah. I do not believe in. I believe that you can pledge allegiance to a prophet, but I do not believe you can pledge allegiance otherwise. Okay, especially in this day and age. Especially in this day and age, Amir Mu'mineen's in the past history. That's a different subject and topic. Okay. In this day and age, and previously our pious predecessors as well, they extracted knowledge from whoever they could and wherever they could, as long as it would connect them to the Creator. This is the correct methodology. And this is the methodology that was passed on to me. And so some people question why I made a list of people that inspired me and they were from different walks of life. And the reason was to show that I do not believe in sectarianism. This is what my belief is. It was to show that I've gone and got my knowledge from whoever I needed to and wherever I needed to get clarity of the Creator. And going and why I've shown this diagram and I've shared that my great great grandfather's Nizamuddin Aulia, not the Nizamuddin Aulia of India, because Nizamuddin Aulia of India, the famous one, he did not have any offspring, so he didn't have any children. So it's not possible for me and so people should never do that, associate that with myself. Um, the reason why I've shown this is because prior to Nizamuddin Aulia, his resting place is in Multan, our families migrated from India, Ludhiana and Jalandhar, and that is to show that basically that's the other reason I do not believe in nationalism. I believe that there was a time and a place for Pakistan to be formed. I'm a fan of Jinnah, I'm a fan of Allama Iqbal, they are my role models. But as a whole, I do not believe in nationalism, and nationalism was not an Islamic thing. And for me, deen, the way of life, comes before nationalism. Okay, and that's something I want to clarify for those that are in Pakistan. For me, deen is the priority. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that prior to Nizamuddin Aulia, his father was actually a Hindu. His name was Sandhu. Okay, so Sandhu accepted Islam. Then you had this figure called Nizamuddin Auliya, and people that, and we had a family friend, well, a family, distant family member in Birmingham who recently passed away, and he would tell stories of Nizamuddin Auliya, and he would say when you would meet Nizamuddin Auliya, it was as though there was light coming out from him, and when you would touch him, it was as though he was electric, right? And as a kid, I never understood what that meant, but now I've been blessed to have a better understanding of what these things mean. But the point is, if if this thing about extremism and jihad and killing the kafir kuffar was how Islam was spread, then the reality is neither I would have been a Muslim today, neither my grandfather, neither his father, neither would you have had a saint like Nizamuddin Auliya, right? And so Islam has not been spread by the sword. In Islam, there is no nationalism. In Islam, there is no sectarianism. In the Quran, it's written distinctly. The Creator has written, يَهْدِ اللَّهُ لِنُورِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah guides to His light whom He pleases. And so, those that kill people because they are disbelievers, who has given them the right to be the judges, or to be the judge of who? I don't know, judges is not even a word, I don't think. But anyway, it's Ramadan, and I'm trying my best in Pakistan, right? So, who's made them the judge of who Allah can guide? Because Allah can guide anyone even till their last breath. So if you're not the creator, then what makes you think you are the creator? As a creation, your role is only to pass on the message. Your role is not to participate in bloodshed. Islam is a pacifist religion and is not a pacifist religion. And this is partly why I've done this presentation. I'll elaborate on that. Okay? Bloodshed has existed in Islam. Okay, but Islam does not promote bloodshed. And I'll give you all evidences you want. I will give you them as we go on. But this is the main reason why I've included this, to give you what my opinions are. So no sectarianism, right? I do not believe in it. And my evidence is in the Quran, and I will elaborate on that. I don't believe in nationalism. I do not believe in racism. I do not believe in capitalism, communism, and I don't even believe in democracy for that matter. And no monarchy. I believe in simply justice and meritocracy. And this is what was passed on to me from my grandfather, and this is the Islam that reached me, and this is what I picked up and gathered from the people else I studied. So after all this, then it begs the question, what are my beliefs, and what is Islam, and what is Islamic spirituality? And the thing is this, for me, and this is something, so Sheikh Zayn Mahmood, who I'll be mentioning a lot, who, again, I've mentioned I do not believe in bay'atu, so pledging your allegiances or spiritual allegiances to any other human being, ordinary human being. And we are all ordinary human beings, and prophets were extraordinary human beings. And Prophet Muhammad, the Islamic doctrine, is the last prophet and the last messenger. And after that, the rest we are all ordinary human beings, including myself. And so my definition, which I mentioned with Sheikh Mahmood when I met him, because I believe that the definition of a true spiritual scholar is a dynamic problem solver for society that facilitates the creation's connection to the creator. That's the definition that I could come up with, and that's what I believe is the best definition, and that is what a true spiritual scholar should be. But here's the caveat. Here's the caveat, and this was the caveat for the 20th and 21st century. That how can you solve society's problem if you do not understand society in the first place? Right? The problem is most of us scholars are not very well educated. Right? Many of them do not go to universities. Many of them do not have bachelor's degrees. Forget master's degrees and forget PhDs. PhD is a very rare thing. Moreover, moreover, those that have this so-called secular education as well, they're very much in touch, or they like to isolate themselves with society. And so they do not really understand what's happening in these other, deep down in these institutions. And so the experience and exposure that I have, I mean, most of the scholars, Islamic scholarship do not have. And I can say that because of one of my age, right? I've been there, seen it, done it, and got the badge till the highest of the education level, right? And but let me balance things out, because when I speak to the public and I mention these things about the scholars, right? Your average Joe in the public gets really happy, and and they give me all these kudos points for speaking the truth. But you know what? That's not the full picture. Let me give you the true reality, right? Because your scholars do not fall from the sky, just like your politician or your leaders do not fall from the skies. Your scholars are a product of society. Your leaders are a product of the society. Right? The scholars are not completely to blame. I'll tell you where the root causes are, and the causes are the people themselves. Okay, let me give you an example. Regardless, and this is regardless of faith, and this pertains to Islam, but it pertains to Christianity and Judaism, and all religious and groups and scholars and everything in between. Right? When a man in the 20th, 21st century, and possibly a bit before that also, has had three sons, for example, right? The one with the highest IQ, Puttar in Urdu or Bini in Arabic, son, um, become a doctor. Okay. The second highest IQ, he said to him, son, become a lawyer or an engineer. Right? And the third one with the least IQ, he said to him, Puttar in Urdu or Punjabi, he said, you son, you are our ticket to paradise, heaven. Go become a hafiz, go become a person who memorizes the Quran off by heart, or go become an alim, a scholar of this deen, this way of life, this religion of ours, and you will become our ticket to Jannah. This is how it's been. And this is something that, this is a joke that Abdul Rahim mentioned at an ISOC event in the University of Manchester, so it's not mine. So I don't want anyone giving me credit for this. But this is the reality. This is the reality. And so if you make your kids with the least IQ the flag bearers of spirituality, what do you expect? You can't have it both ways. You can't have great scholarship and then you giving the least. And I'll speak for myself. Alhamdulillah, everything, so praise be to the Creator, everything that I've been blessed with in terms of knowledge, I found spirituality and theology the most difficult subject matter to penetrate and comprehend. And I cannot understand how you can have it any other way. And so the shortcomings and so people that get really excited about me having a go at scholars, etc., right? You must realize and understand my full perspective. So anyhow, this is the definition that the scholars. I know scholars will be listening to this as well, because my love and respect for the scholars is immense. And so I know they'll be listening to this, and this is what you need to focus on. And so, who have been my main inspirations? So I mentioned to you my grandfather was my inspiration, and those that read the description of this event, I mentioned in that as well. After my grandfather passed away, he was my main role model. There were some voids inside me, a lot of unanswered questions about everything in life. I began to question everything from a spiritual level, emotional level, mental level, and physical level. And the Creator guided me. He filled those voids through many people, many people, but predominantly these three personalities. first personality that has been instrumental in my development. And I also mentioned this, by the way. I do not represent the point of views of these people and their organizations. They do not necessarily represent the complete viewpoints of mine either, right? But the love and respect that we have for each other is immense. So I'll mention these people and how I've got to know them over time. We all have our own views. However, the key thing about us is that in an age which has been plagued with division and divide, we have stuck by the principles of unity, and confusion comes from division and divide. And our premise has been that of wisdom, love, and unity, tolerance, patience, justice, truth, and peace. So this has been the overriding factors or the values that have kept us together. And so anyway, I'll give you a bit of interesting stuff that some of you might find. So my first inspiration was Sheikh Zia Mahmood. So Sheikh Zia Mahmood, I first come across this Forgotten Legacy event in Rochdale. So Rochdale is a little town near Oldham, and Sheikh Ninawi was there, and this Nasheed artist Kamaluddin was there, and this is the time. So my background is Deen got to me, and I mentioned Deen got to me through the Tablighi Jamaat movement, who are these Muslim missionaries, and basically my uncle is into the Tablighi Jamaat movement, and that's how Islam got to me. Right? A lot of people ask me, and even Muslims in Pakistan now that ask me, and what am I? You know, I really do not like that question. What am I? Because I am a Muslim. Full stop. Period. End of. Okay. You can ask me the question, and I will answer you happily. How did Islam reach me? And Islam reached me through the Tablighi Jamaat movement, which I have nothing to be ashamed of. Okay, I'm proud of. And I've spent time with Sayyid Anwar, the cricketer, who's linked with Junaid Jamshed, and Junaid Jamshed was a friend of my father. Well, he's passed away late, Junaid Jamshed, but he was a friend of my father. And the thing is, the Tablighi Jamaat movement is what kept me rooted toward Islam and Deen. I had many differences. I would debate a lot with those who I'd go on Jamaat, this movement with. They would never satisfy, extinguish the fire that I had inside of me for clarity on Deen. And partly because a lot of them were not scholars, and even those that were scholars, or upcoming scholars, could not handle the fire inside of me for the questions and the clarity that I wanted pertaining to this religion and this way of life. But anyhow, the Tablighi Jamaat movement originates from the school of Deoband. Deoband, basically a school in India, and they follow the jurisprudence, the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa. So I'm not apologetic about my roots of it, how Islam has reached me. Okay, but anyhow, being young, immature, I had made I was judgmental. So I see this guy looking like a Tablighi Jamaati, which is Sheikh Zia Mahmood with the big beard and his imam on, and he starts speaking. I'm like, here we go, not another one of these again. And anyhow, as he spoke, his word, as he mentions, it permeated my heart. I knew what he was, whoever he was, and he was from a very far distance. I could see him, and I said, "This man speaks the truth. Whatever he is, wherever he's from, he's speaking the truth." And later on, and this was around the same time. This was around the same time where things were happening with Palestine and Gaza, and I was very very confused as to why there was no Muslim answer. You go to Saudi Arabia, you see all the lavish lifestyles, and Dubai being built and Abu Dhabi being built and all these places being built, and when it came to the Palestinians who were being bombarded, nothing was being said. And when it came to Islamic scholarship, everyone was just silent. No one would speak a word. And the only person who had the bottle to say anything or take things, who would actualize things in terms of action, was Sheikh Zia Mahmood. And so my love and respect for him since that day till now has not changed a dime. It's not changed. Not, if anything, it's increased with time. And so anyway, Sheikh Zayed Mahmood, and then a few other incidences happened with Sheikh Zayed Mahmood. His brother-in-law was in Glasgow. I would spend my itikafs in Glasgow, itikaf spiritual retreats in Glasgow Central Masjid, where my grandma's brother was an accountant at the Central Masjid. My extended family members were in Glasgow, and yeah, there was some connection with Sheikh Zayed Mahmood. I won't go into too much, but the point is, Sheikh Zayed Mahmood invited me to his house one day, and we were discussing this project that I was thinking of launching, Manchester Islamic Events, to unite organisations in the UK and to promote projects. And this was before, I'm going to say he was this big timer. Before he was, big timers are always big, right? So let me get that straight. Big timers are always big, and it's only a matter of time before they become big timers, right? So he was still a immense personality then, but I'll just say that as Sufa Institute hadn't grown, and that's his institute that he's a principal of, it hadn't grown as big at that time. And so he invited me to his house, and I remember going there with my Ferrari laptop at the time, Acer Ferrari laptop, and sitting down, and and this is how to judge a true scholar. Look at a person's characteristics, and look at his sincerity, and look at his substance. When I went even as a kid, I think I must have been 19 or 20, I think, at the time. Something around there. It was 2000, and it was 2012 actually. So sorry, yeah. So I was 21, 2012. 2012. I went to see him, and he makes tea for me. He serves me. Hospitability of a scholar for a 21-year-old kid. You know, and this is how you differentiate people, and even scholars. Look at what we say, ikhlas. Look at the humility, right? Because if you want knowledge, and let me share this with the youth, if you want knowledge will only come to you through humility. And this is something I'll tell you about Islamic downfall in scholarship. When you adopt the characteristics of Iblis, Satan, which is that of arrogance, foolishness, and pride, that will only lead to knowledge being taken away from you. And this is something that I learnt from Sheikh Imran Hussein, who's on the third picture, to your, or on the right. When the incident of Surat al-Kahf is mentioned, and the humility that Khizr al-Islam is trying to instill into Musa al-Islam in order to expand his wisdom. Anyhow, I'm digressing again. So Sheikh Zayed Mahmood, again, has been instrumental. He's been more of a mentor. None of these guys have been formal teachers of mine. I've not had the time. I've been focused on my own work and my own progression in life, and my own projects and my own visions. But these are the people that Sheikh Zayed Mahmood and Professor Salim al-Hasni. So now, where's the connection? Okay, this is the connection. I was at Sheikh Zayed Mahmood's house. He was making tea. And this is the thing, his family, his kids were ill, and he had to take care of them, but he still took time out to see me, which was overwhelming. But whilst he was making his tea, me being me, came across a book which I couldn't resist. That book was called 1001 Inventions, Muslim Heritage and Legacy, right? I opened that book, and I started reading through that book, and that book is it's a serendipitous moment, because I'm reading about this guy who is also a professor of mechanical engineering, who is based in Manchester, where I've done my undergraduate from, and I'm completing my undergraduate masters at this point. So I started my undergraduate program in 2008, and 2012 was last year. And this chap is Professor Salim al-Hassani, who's in the middle picture. So I've come to see this big Islamic scholar, Sheikh Zia Mahmood, whilst there's this other, and I've even discussed about possibilities of moving from Manchester to Birmingham because to enhance my understanding of religion and spirituality. But Sheikh Zia Mahmood's stance was very strong. I mean, and I've come to the same conclusion that do not leave the battlefield wherever you are. Whatever happens, wherever you are, add value to society, be an asset to humanity. Do not leave the battlefield. Be a source of good wherever you are. Right? Look at the challenges because there are challenges everywhere, and become solutions for those. Identify the opportunities and become solutions and address those challenges. Anyhow, that led me to Professor Salim Al Husni. That book, that visit to Sheikh Zia Mahmood led me to Professor Salim Al Husni, who was a professor of mechanical engineering, like my grandfather. Ironically, my grandfather did his PhD in Birmingham. That was the irony. Whereas Professor Salim Al Husni was based in Manchester, where I lived and spent most of my life. So I thought, okay, how is it that there's such a big personality who's done so much amazing work, but I've not even heard about it? And I spent most of my life, and I'm seeking this Islamic knowledge and Muslim heritage and all this thing. And so that led me to Professor Salim Al Husni. Professor Salim Al Husni, I arranged to meet, and again, one of the most amazing personalities that I've met in my life. Again, someone who's been a mentor for me, because well, people that know me know that I've been labeled as a troublemaker. So my energy is just too high to tame. So, but I'm just too passionate about what I do. So I need these figureheads on top of me to channel me. Not as so much so that they can tame me, because a lot of people tried, even my PhD supervisor tried, but a lot of big personalities that struggled to tame me. And that's not due to arrogance or pride. That's just the nature that I've been created, as I've just been a passionate person about doing good. But anyhow, Professor Salim is someone who who would then become a mentor for me, and I would go and spend time at his institute. So his institute is Foundation of Science, Technology and Civilization, and their vision is to restore justice and give credit where it's due. So a lot of the knowledge that has been passed in the West is not given credit where it's due. These periods that are known as the Dark Ages were actually golden ages for other civilizations. And so what Professor Salim Al Husni realized and imparted with me was the fact that by teaching people that these were dark ages and not giving credit where it's due has had an effect on the populace, in the sense that it has created a inferiority complex amongst the Muslims for the lack of credit given to the Islamic civilization for their contribution to science, technology, and civilization development. And it's created an superiority complex for the modern Western civilization, who claim that they are the pioneers and they have been the ones that have brought about this renaissance and this amazing contribution to what the world and the day and age that we live in today. And so the whole idea of his projects and his work is to bring back balance and justice and order, through promoting the great works of all these amazing scholars of the past and what they've contributed. And so, in terms of personalities, the Sheikh Zia Mahmood, Professor Salim are completely different personalities, right? And that leads me on to the third personality, who I've not yet met, who I've had email correspondence with, right, but I've not yet had the pleasure of meeting. And he's someone that I've watched mostly on YouTube, and that's Sheikh Imran Hussain. Now, he's probably one of the most controversial figures out there, but I have huge and I have immense love and respect for him. Why? Because in this day and age, it is very easy to back down from issues that are deemed to be controversial but are the truth. For instance, the issue of usury, riba, interest. Okay, and not only that, he is someone that has penetrated into the ranks and beyond the ranks of your average Muslim. A bit like myself. When I would go to conferences where knowledge is at its peak, the Muslim presence was very little or next to non-existent. Okay, even for example, a bioenergy conference, there was like a handful of Muslims, like I think less than five. There was about four of us. Went to one in Brussels. I think I was the only one, as far as I recall. Yes, European talent pool. I was um, I was one, and there was a girl from a poetry girl. But the presence is very little and next to non-existing. And Sheikh Imran Hussein is someone who's been there, seen it, and done it as well, and he's gotten the badge. He was a diplomat. He's someone who read the janazah of one of the greatest Muslim heroes of the 20th century, who? Malcolm X. To have the honor of reading the janazah, the funeral prayer of a hero who was a martyr and one of the most inspirational personalities of the 20th century period, Malcolm X, is no small thing. And so, despite differences of opinions with Sheikh Imran Hussein on numerous things, the love and respect that I have for him is beyond words. And so these are the main three personalities who basically fill the void. And the other thing about Sheikh Imran Hussein that really linked to my grandfather was that basically he's a guy that stands on the truth, and that is one characteristic that everyone knew about my grandfather, Professor Ladin Sheikh. He was a man that stood for the truth and lived on the truth and died on the truth. He even would he quit his job. So some and the stories that I'll share with you. He worked so after his PhD. He came to Multan, worked in a fertilizer factory. A guy was promoted who had a bachelor's or some other lesser academic qualification than him, above him, based on what is known as Safarish, which is basically putting a word in for you. So he was promoted not on merit. He was promoted on basically meritocracy. And so what my granddad did, he didn't sit down and wonder what would happen for food on the table. He resigned the next day because basically his faith dictated the truth that the creator is the provider, and he could not sit and rest with the fact that he could reside in a place which practiced meritocracy over meritocracy, which is the sunnah. And so this is something that I've seen in Sheikh Imran Hussein. He's a man that lives on the truth and preaches the truth. And there's a lot of differences and a lot of stuff that he says that I disagree with, but essentially he says what he believes in, and this is lacking. Okay. Professor Salim Al-Husni, there's some things that I want to share about him, because some things that these people I want to in this session is just to get the fundamentals out of the way. Something that I want to share with the youth, which is important. When I questioned Professor Salim Al-Husni once I met him, how is it that him and his peers achieved so much in such a short space of time, just like the Muslim inventors of the past were able to, whilst my generation are so weak and we're not able to achieve as much? He shared something profound. He said that when they first came in, I think the 1960s and 70s, he said that we made it a goal to get first class degrees, you know, and we justified that. And there was a late family friend, a mutual family friend of ours, Dr. Bashir, late Dr. Bashir, um, who did a lot for the Muslims in Manchester. He mentioned that basically we made it a goal. So Professor Slim was mentioning this. He said that we made it a goal to get a first class degree, and they justified that from the verses of the Quran. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تعمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. That that you've been enjoined to do what is good and forbid what is evil, and you believe in Allah, that you've been created as the best of nations, right? You enjoin what is good and you forbid what is evil, and you believe in Allah. And he said that we took these verses literal, that we have been created as the best of nations, and we will enjoin what is good and we will forbid what is evil, and we believe in Allah, and this is why therefore we will excel. And then he said, we then treated our work as part of our deen. We did not separate the two. Okay? And therefore Allah put barakah, so He put blessings in our work. And so what is barakah? Barakah is a little going a long way. That is what barakah essentially is. Right? For those of you into science, and I know those of you with me on bioenergetics are probably listening, it's essentially optimizing your bioenergetic potential, your capacity, which the creator does, so the one source does. And this is how, and anyway, going back, so they did not do, and this is how they achieved so much. I was also once asked by a friend, Adil, why is it that we did a bachelor's, right, and we started working, and the bachelor's has worn us out, and some did a master's and wore them out, and I went on to do a PhD, and after that I was still going strong. I was doing social entrepreneurship alongside, and a lot of other things were happening as well. And what was keeping me ticking? And this is the secret. The secret is that, and this is what Professor Slim also mentioned, that when you do something for deen, you will be going till your last breaths and it will not wear you out. When you do something for this dunya, as a function of time, it will wear you out. Okay? So if you do something for deen hereafter, until your last breaths, it will not wear you out. And this, in fact, was something that Prophet Muhammad also mentioned. You know? And this is something that, again, I discussed with Mufti Imran at Sufa Institute and Sheikh Awadullah, who is also Al-Azri, who is a leading scholar in Manchester. You know, it's something I discussed with them. And as to why scholars look much younger than their age. And the reason is something that the Prophet mentioned. He mentioned that those that keep the deen of Allah fresh, Allah keeps them fresh. This is the secret. Those that keep the deen of Allah, the Creator, fresh, Allah keeps them fresh. And so this is something about the amazing people, the three amazing people that I could narrow down to, that have really inspired me amongst it, and there have been many others. And so I'm going to get down to my style of teaching, because my style may not suit everyone, and I understand that. And so the style, after everything that I've been blessed with, I've come up with, that I deem to be the most effective, is by combining history, science, philosophy, and spirituality. This is how I teach things. These form my perspective. My experience, exposure, knowledge, and skills, and my talents, and my wisdom is a function of, well, these things form my perspective, which then give you my analysis and my discussion and conclusion. You do not have to agree with them. I do not expect people to agree with them. Think through it yourself, right? You will have your own perspective on things. Come up with your own conclusions. It does not, and it will not affect me. I am just here to share my experience with you, with the intention that it may benefit you. So the last one is spirituality. What is my definition of spirituality? The best after visiting I don't know, dozens, or even you could say hundreds of scholars, the best definition of spirituality that has resonated with me has been that from Professor Salim Al-Hasni, from a Muslim perspective. And he is also, as far as I know, is not a formal Muslim Islamic scholar. I don't know if he has a sanad, a jazza and all that stuff. But you know what? For me, and it's for me, it's good enough. And the definition that me and him had once, and in a conversation, and the conversation we had, and the definition was essentially spirituality is a fuel derived to drive good actions. To drive good actions. The conversation that we had was essentially that the way or the reason our Islamic scholarship failed was that our scholars know and knew how to drive the spirituality, the fuel, through things such as the Quran, the Holy Scriptures, and through prayers, etc., etc., etc. But then they started to analyze the fuel. So those that are scientists, it's like fuel is in hydrocarbons, the fossil fuel. They started then analyzing how many alkenes there are, how many alkanes there are, how many double bonds there are, how many carbons there are, how many hydrogens there are, instead of using that fuel to drive good actions. This was a shortcoming of Islamic scholarship, in his opinion, and I agree 100, and if there's more than that, 100%, 110%, I agree with that. And so this is the definition of spirituality that I go with. There's another very interesting one from Tony Schwartz, who I assume is from a Jewish faith. I don't know whether he still follows that belief. I do not know his belief system. He's not someone I've met. He's someone that I've studied his work from through some webinars. But anyhow, he described it as energy derived from a sense of purpose, and I think that's also a beautiful definition of spirituality. I've mentioned, the other keyword that I've mentioned to the non-Muslims that are listening is the word deen. Let me just clarify that, and that'll be the last thing for today, defining that, because that's a key term. Okay, so deen means way of life. Okay, fitra is a word that means natural disposition. Okay, I have taken deen to mean the natural way of life. So I essentially deen al-fitra, depending upon the Arabic, and I'm not a student of Arabic, so you'll have to excuse me on that. But the natural way of life, deen, is the way of life that was established by Adam. It is the way of life that has been adopted by 124,000 prophets, including Noah, including Abraham, including Moses, David, Solomon, Jesus, Muhammad. So that is what, when I use the word deen, that's what it means. It's the set way of life that was practiced by 124,000 prophets and their followers, and that is the one straight path, which is also what we would mention as Idin as-Sirat al-Mustaqim. So we mentioned that it's in the opening verses of the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha, which we recite 5 times a day in every prayer, which is this one straight way. It is the way of life, the one way of life that has not changed and will not change. And so that is what deen means. People take deen as religion. They've divided it into religion, but there are issues with that. But that's something I will expand on. As we progress. Anyway, that's done for the first session, the background, for me to explain the format and give you a brief overview of myself, of why I'm doing this, and I would love your feedback. And I'm really excited to get into the meat, the actual content. And I hope that you found this beneficial, and I hope you'll find what is to come beneficial. And apologies for any exterior sound effects and noises. That's something I cannot control. I'm at home trying to do this in Ramadan, and as